me, I think that it's beyond a passion. I think it's an obsession, and I think it's around taking the idea of an insight or a premise and truly making that scale where millions of South Africans are talking about your content simultaneously and really sharing and getting excited and propping up the fame of the brand, all the while seeing members of your team who've worked on a project touch a project and the excitement that they get when shit starts going viral. I think that the stickiness is in two sides of things. I think there's like the hyper speed that things like TikTok offer you, because TikTok offers you AI integration and the ability to become more of a well-rounded creator without needing all the fancy tools, editing equipment, etc. But then for me, the space that I'm really excited about is the streaming wars and what streaming platforms offer. There's an innovation and a creativity, and then ultimately the execution. And the ideas, ideas are a dime a dozen, but what's the interesting mix in the standout work? How have you paired X thing with Y execution? And sometimes it's that unlikely mix of the innovation into the creativity that makes you as a judge really say, wow, this thing stood out. And it's something that can be explained simply, because when you're a judge on these awards, you realize something being presented simply was insanely complex to get it to a presentably simple moment. Huge fan of Liquid Death. Their insight was around the fact that he was going to a lot of these concerts, festivals, Vans Warped Tour, etc. And so many of the bands, they were drinking out of energy drink cans, but so many of them just wanted a water, because you're playing and you want to be hydrated. You don't want to be drinking too much sugar or having to drink too much alcohol, etc. So Liquid Death was built around the premise of murder your thirst, and they've got these very like rock and roll rock star kind of imagery on their cans. And so much of their content that they develop now is in-house, and they come up with these really interesting mix of innovation and creativity. Brand partnerships, co-brands. They're one of the best brands on the planet now at generating mass global talkability. They use LinkedIn very effectively. They use YouTube and social channels, and they generate tons of earned media off the back of that. And what I love about Liquid Death, they don't take themselves too seriously, and they also prove the point that done is better than perfect. It's like, what are your USPs and how are you communicating them? And design is the cornerstone for emotionally moving an audience to really have that kind of love, that passion, that obsession with your brand because of what it looks like, feels like, communicates through me. And whether it's the color palette or whether it's, a host of other design options, styles, and trends, like that for me is always an interesting space to see something that speaks its own design language.